Hey everyone, John here! And the way a video game is displayed, its playing field, should be quite a versatile thing, right? Like when you look at art, you've got portrait and landscape as the two most prominent fields. And yet with video games, we basically have 4x3, which was mostly used in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, and now modern day 16:9. You can go ultra wide, but those are the standards, right? We never really display content vertically. It's always horizontal when it comes to console games. And yet, looking back at arcade machines from the 70s, 80s, and 90s, many of them did play around with the aspect ratio, how you orient the screen. Many games like Donkey Kong and Donkey Kong Jr. and Punch-Out and Shmups like Gunbird would have a vertical screen, allowing for much longer playing fields rather than wider ones. And this is kind of a lost art, and it's something that's very tricky to replicate with modern displays. And yet, the Switch is something that you can just pick up. And so, if I were to turn this bad boy on, and turn it on its side, all of a sudden, we have arcade-accurate Donkey Kong, where I just died because I wasn't paying attention. Tate mode is not a new thing, but it is an uncommon thing, because how many people can just turn their TVs on their side, especially when it comes to consoles? And the beauty with the Switch is it's incredibly easy to put this thing on its side, especially with the OLED. Watch this. We're going to take the stand out, and instead of putting it like this, like a weirdo, we're going to put it like this, like a gentleman. And now, the Switch is standing securely and proudly as a vertical boy. But again, why would we do this? Well, let's look at Donkey Kong right here running in its standard horizontal mode. This is okay, but there is a lot of empty black space. The playing field is much skinnier than a standard 4x3, so why not occupy more? Why not turn it on its side? Flip it in the options and make it a proper Tate game. Look at this. It's like we have our own personal arcade machine. One of my favorite things Nintendo's done this generation is they've released their arcade games for the very first time. We've never had arcade Donkey Kong at home before. The closest we came was a side mode in DK64 where they recreated it. But apart from that, it's always been the NES game. But now, not only do we have the arcade original, arcade accurate, but we can also play it just like we could at the arcades. But what incentivized me to make this video is I recently got a brand new monitor because my old one just stopped working, and this one swivels around. I know this is pretty common for monitors, but it's new to me, and I love it. So for the last few weeks, I've turned my desk into an arcade machine. I've been playing a bunch of different games in Tate mode, and playing it like this on a much larger display is yummy. Playing it on the Switch handheld is good. You can play Tate mode on a train or whatever, but playing it on a big screen like this, larger than an arcade machine screen in fact, is the dream. When I say I want the ideal video game setup, I'm not talking about flashing lights and LEDs. I'm talking about a vertical screen, baby. Here's another Nintendo arcade game, Punch-Out! Now this one plays pretty well on a horizontal screen, but it's not right. So the way they do it there is they stack the two screens next to each other. But Punch-Out was a dual screen game, much like the Game & Watch and DS. You had one screen with the information about your opponent, and the other screen with the actual boxing. And so this feels very right. And with Punch-Out Arcade playing very differently to NES Punch-Out, this is a must-have for any legacy Nintendo fan. You should have Arcade Punch-Out on your Switch, and if you do, Tate it. If you don't have a swiveling monitor, just put your TV on its side. It'll be okay, probably. Or undock it, I don't know, I'm not your mum. But typically, when I'm thinking about playing games in Tate mode, I am thinking about shmups, vertical shooters. This is the ideal form for Tate. These games are entirely about being vertical, and usually when playing them in the regular horizontal method, you've got a very small screen to play with. But suddenly, it's like the world has opened up. Playing Ikaruga like this changes a person. You will not be the same human that you came in as before playing Ikaruga in the ratio it was meant to be played in. Switch is actually a bit of a heaven for shmups. There's so many great legacy ones on this system, and one that I grew up with is Gunbird 2. I had this on the Dreamcast, and both Gunbird 1 and Gunbird 2, which were called Mobile Light Force 1 and 2, they're rebranded on PlayStation, so they're the same game. But anyway, Gunbird 1 and 2 absolutely rock. Gunbird 2 specifically, and it's so much fun finally playing it like this. I've always known it horizontally, but vertically is the way forward in life. And we've also got the Xbox 360 gem, Dodonpachi Resurrection. I played this all the time with my friends back in the day, and I'm so glad that this and Death Smiles made their way to Switch, because these were locked on 360 for some reason, which I don't think is really known for Japanese shmups, but it was cool that it had a few. But yeah, you can play these on the Switch now in any form you want, whether it's docked or undocked. You can get Tate out of both, and I really think you should. These are all excellent things to do with the Switch on its side, and they allow the arcade era to live again in the correct form. However, there are some games that are brand new that utilize Tate mode, and one of my favorites is Downwell. Downwell's a brilliant game no matter how you play it, but especially on an OLED Switch, this is a standout. This is a game of pure blacks, and unlike many of the other Tate modes, which don't quite fit the entire screen, this was designed around 16 by 9 on its side. This fills the entire OLED screen with pure blacks, and it just looks stunning. This is a game you should play regardless of the method, but it does sing in Tate. Now, let's look at two collections, and I love how this one is presented. This is the Capcom Arcade Collection, and the way that this works is you buy standalone games as basically DLC, and they fill out a virtual arcade. But you can put it in Tate mode and experience everything vertically. And by that I mean not just the game, but the arcade machine. Like you can pretend that you're looking at this game from a first-person perspective, looking into the arcade cabinet, being able to see all the buttons, the cabinet itself remade, the screen, just all as if it were a real arcade machine. Of course, there are some games that are made specifically around virtual screens, and they really shine in here too, but I just love looking at these machines in this aspect ratio. I think it's awesome. And the other collection we have is Namco Museum. You should buy this for Pac-Man Vs, by the way, the GameCube game. It's much more accessible than it was on GameCube. Like, you don't need 4 Game Boy Advances plugged into the same console. It's just a really fun way of playing Pac-Man Vs. But anyway, Tate mode. You can play the entire Namco Museum here just by switching it on its side. It just flips the entire presentation of this collection, and of course gives you a bit more screen ratio for the bulk of these games, and it just works great across the board, whether it's menus, whether it's the actual gameplay, and yeah, even for Pac-Man Vs. There are far more Tate games that I haven't talked about. These are just the ones that I own, but I love that the Switch has allowed developers to embrace this format. It's very uncommon. I've seen it on other consoles. I think it's mostly in shmups, and you'll probably find these options in the PlayStation and Xbox versions of these games too, but I'd be doubtful they would have them if it weren't for the Switch being this versatile in the first place. Since the very first time I experienced Tate mode on the Switch, I have thought this was the coolest thing, and I utilize it all the time. I'm so glad to now have a monitor that can turn on its side, so I can do this on a big display and pretend I have an arcade machine at home. It's just so cool that Nintendo finally brought their arcade games to a console. This was something they'd never done before, and with the versatility of a machine, you can so easily turn on its side, kick up the kickstand, and just play. It's a joy. So, have you experienced Tate mode before on the Switch? And if not, has this changed your perspective? Are you gonna go and do it? If like you answer yes to all of the above, good. If you liked what you saw and still say no, I think you can change your mind. It can be done. Don't fixate on what you can't do. You can do it. You can do this. You can do this and so much more. I believe in you. Honestly, you're capable of more than Tate mode. All right. Did you need to hear that? I don't know. How are you feeling? I'll catch you next time though. Bye everybody.